Hello everyone! Today I'm bringing you a just slightly delayed review. Godzilla vs. Kong is scheduled to come out in a week and a half, and so here is my full review of the film that introduced the latest version of King Kong to the legendary MonsterVerse, 2017's Kong Skull Island, directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts. In 1973, the day before U.S. troops pull out of Vietnam, one unit is assigned as military escort to a group en route to a hitherto uncharted island in the South Pacific. The group claims it just wants to do a geological survey of the area, but because Monarch is involved, we know there's some greater purpose. They're not at the island long, however, before Kong makes his appearance, taking out their helicopters and scattering the survivors. Two groups form, one heading to the rendezvous point with fingers crossed they'll be picked up there, and the other heading to a crash site to help a survivor who got separated. But not everyone's on the same page regarding how to handle the giant monkey. Most of them are bent on getting away from the island alive, but the commanding officer is bent on killing Kong. This was a rewatch for me. I saw the movie the first time a few years ago, and actually, I've already reviewed it. I did a condensed review in a video titled What Else I Saw in July 2017. And fun fact, it was in that video, while I was talking about this movie, that I said, hey, I'm thinking of watching some Godzilla movies, and I was wondering, would any of you be interested in a review series? And I got enough interest in that I went ahead, and the rest is history. And here we are, we've brought it full circle. Here's what I thought of the movie the second time around. As I'm sure most of you know, this film was sandwiched between 2014's Godzilla and 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. Its primary function is to introduce Kong as a key player who exists in the world simultaneously with Godzilla. By increasing his size, they make him a more viable opponent capable of beating Godzilla, maybe, in a future giant smackdown for the ages. Kong joins the picture about 25 minutes in. Actually, that's not true. We see him for a minute in the prologue, which is set in 1944, when a Japanese pilot and an American pilot crash land on Skull Island, and are in the middle of trying to kill each other when Kong interrupts them. This early appearance comes as a pleasant surprise after the 2014 Godzilla made us wait ages to get a good look at him. The prologue is followed by the opening titles, which echo those of 2014 in style and purpose, bringing us through nearly 30 years of scientific advancement, discovery, exploration, and war. Much of the first act is spent establishing Monarch and introducing the main characters. We find out some of Monarch's background, that it was founded by Truman in 1946, which I guess makes the organization a little bit less shady. A little bit? By 73, their representative, played by John Goodman, is still looked at as a kook, just a little bit less crazy than people who believe in aliens. It doesn't help the overall sketchiness that he's concealing his own ulterior motive for wanting to go to the island. He and his assistants are joined by main characters played by Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, and Brie Larson, along with a motley crew of scientist civilians and battle-weary soldiers eager to go home. Tom Hiddleston is ostensibly the star of the movie, playing an ex-Special Forces officer now doing contract work as a tracker. There was a period of a few years there where I was absolutely obsessed with Tom Hiddleston, but strangely, I tend to forget that he was in this movie. I'm not crazy about him like I used to be, though of course I still find him attractive, but I can't help feeling that there could have been more for him to do besides looking surly or grim or awestruck at appropriate moments and getting a couple chances to play an action hero guns a-blazing. Samuel L. Jackson's Packard seems the more prominent character, maybe because he gets more intense close-ups. He is the main antagonist and gets the bulk of the big speeches, including an unusually timed Icarus monologue, and some one-liners that come dangerously close to being cliches. He's driven by revenge, a desire to kill Kong because Kong killed his men. He becomes fixated on this to the point that he turns on the men he still has left and chooses to do further injury to Kong rather than save himself or do harm to a bigger threat. What's a bit muddled is at what point he goes off the rails. Toward the third act, the protagonists talk about him losing his grip, but it's heavily implied that his reality is skewed before they even take off. Whether war has warped him, or he's like this by nature, or he really does want to avenge his troops, though, isn't clear. Every slow push in on his face is ominous, but it's basically left to us to draw conclusions based on common assumptions, which makes the writing seem kind of lazy. Jackson gives one of the stronger performances in the film, though. Heyo, Editing Weaselberry here. I've been thinking about this and going through the movie again, and I'm actually not sure that his behavior isn't at least partially justified. As a military leader with a sense of responsibility for his men, he hates the senseless loss of life. That's established early in the film when he's looking in a box of medals and dog tags and says, "All this for what?" When Kong appears and starts taking out his men, who had no idea they were flying into danger, his face registers shock and devastation. I can't say I totally blame him for his outrage when these soldiers, who have beat the odds and survived the Vietnam War, are killed in what they were all led to believe was a simple geological expedition. And from his perspective, remember, he doesn't get clued in like the protagonists do that Kong is actually protecting the humans on the island and came to stop the helicopters from dropping more bombs because they lead to a skullcrawler invasion. From Packard's perspective, Kong just popped up out of nowhere and came after them with no provocation. Packard takes it personally and takes it too far, and that out-of-control desire to get revenge makes him the bad guy. But I don't think he starts out an antagonist. He doesn't go to the island with wicked intent. Brie Larson's character does make a comment that the guy's wound pretty tight. That's after a little dust-up they've had on the controversial subject of the Vietnam War, and given their relative positions, it's not unexpected. And even though he's a military leader over there, and would not take kindly to an anti-war photographer, he's not especially mean or nasty to her, so I sure hope that they weren't thinking that the role he plays over there makes him the bad guy by default. Anyway, those are some additional observations that I had. On with the rest of the review. Another character who's on screen a lot but feels insufficiently developed is Brie Larson's anti-war photojournalist, who gets wind of this operation and suspects something's up, so she somehow secures a spot on the team. To me, the character just comes across as one-dimensional and hard to like. She seems pushy and conceited, with a deluded notion that what she has to say carries significant weight in this group. Characters will be arguing or threatening each other, and she intervenes as if she has some authority or her 2 cents, consisting of, "I think we should do what so-and-so says, this is crazy," are going to change people's minds. I get that they were trying to have a strong female character in this male-dominant cast, but she doesn't really contribute anything. No special knowledge, no keen observation, she's just there. Her chief function, I think, is to connect with Kong, as is the cinematic tradition. But I'll get to that. The movie does spend a considerable amount of time trying to develop personalities among the leads and the supporting cast. I'm okay with that. I like character development. It's important, even in a monster movie. The problem is there are just too many characters. If you tally up their time on screen, many of the actors have just a couple minutes in the whole movie to distinguish themselves, to make an impression with a backstory or an attempt at humor. And with so much other stuff going on, it just doesn't work. It doesn't stick. I don't feel like I really get to know anybody. Unfortunately, that means that when people are in danger, I'm not particularly invested in their fate, and when they get killed, it's like, oh well, another one bites the dust. The one character I do find endearing is, spoiler, John C. Reilly's World War II pilot who's been living peacefully with the natives for 30 years. He's quirky as anything, but also conflicted, excited to see some fellow Americans again and to go home, but reluctant to leave his native friends behind, and unsure what he's going to find when he leaves the safety of the community. In a way, he's the most level-headed and most helpful character, yet he's also the funniest character, in my opinion. He's awkward, and he's out of touch because he's been away from people for so long and the world's moved on without him. Yes, some of the jokes are predictable, I suppose, but I laughed, and then I was moved by the final scene with him, which is heartwarming. Now let's talk about the stuff you're really interested in. This is the first major screen appearance of King Kong since the 2005 Peter Jackson film. That's a big movie to try to live up to, but where Kong himself is concerned, I think they did pretty well. He comes across as larger than life, artistically photographed to emphasize his sheer mass. I say photographed like any of this is real. There's a moment in the first act that's an obvious gear shift. Everybody's pumped up, getting their first look at this beautiful island, and we start seeing this juxtaposition of weapons of war invading a pristine natural habitat. A stray bullet carelessly tumbling to the ground, bombs dropping near a herd of deer, explosions reflected in the aviator sunglasses, and then boom, the music cuts out and Kong dramatically rises, blocking out the sun, and then he starts tossing choppers like matchbox cars, stepping on people like they're bugs, and shocking us with several minutes of jaw-dropping carnage. That's our startling introduction, but the rest of Kong's scenes are given to revealing his humanity. There's this close encounter with the lone soldier, which shows that Kong must fight for his own survival against other massive creatures in the ecosystem that want to kill him. I see this icky battle with the octopus as a reference to a similar fight in Toho's King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1962. He also shares a couple moments with Brie Larson's character, a nod to the Beauty and the Beast themes of past Kong films, but this movie purposely doesn't go in that direction by having him develop a special possessive interest in her. There is no real relationship between them, although he does save her life once. So it does have Kong connect with her, and we do see Kong appreciating beauty as he sits alone watching the colorful night sky overhead. This Kong is expressive like those who have preceded him. That's a big part of what makes him Kong, after all. It goes without saying that he's strong, but he's also a clever fighter, showing his superiority in his ability to wield foreign objects as weapons. Kong also seems to be able to sense whether people have good or evil intentions. His interaction with the antagonist is openly hostile, but with the good guys, he's tentatively calm and accepting. By the way, it's surmised that Kong is actually still growing. That means that years later, when he has to face Godzilla, he'll be that much bigger. One of the best aspects of the movie is its creativity regarding the other giant inhabitants of Skull Island. Since the 1933 Marion C. Cooper film, Skull Island has been known as a mysterious haven for giant animals and prehistoric creatures. Any movie that takes place there needs to show the audience some cool monster designs, and I think that Kong Skull Island delivers. We've got the giant water buffalo, I guess that's what it is, a passive creature that comes face to face with our main characters. There's the ginormous spider hidden in the bamboo forest, revealed in one of the movie's creepiest and most memorable sequences. There are ugly prehistoric birds and traces of long-dead dinosaurs. There's an insect-like log monster, which is weird but cool. Too bad it doesn't get more screen time. And there are the skull crawlers, the real enemy on Skull Island, which Kong has been keeping at bay. These are real nasty-looking things, inspired by a two-armed lizard that appears in the original 33 film. They come out of vents in the earth, and when the bombs start detonating, they emerge in droves, which is why Kong attacks the American helicopters. There's a big skullcrawler too, and that one's especially ferocious, though without buildings or people in the shot, it's hard to get a sense of scale. The death scene for this one is particularly yucky. The movie introduces the Hollow Earth theory, which is further explored, literally, in King of the Monsters. Skull Island is alleged to be an emergence point for these giant creatures that have been secretly living underground for all these years. This is to explain how it's possible that these beings can exist on the planet all at the same time and the human race has no idea. Henry Jackman composed the score for this movie. It doesn't stick with me the way the music for the films that came before, and especially after this, does, but the score is fine. The soundtrack is heavy on late 60s, early 70s hits, which makes sense given the time period and the obvious Apocalypse Now vibe. I thought I caught a few movie references here and there. What I was reminded of most was Jurassic Park, of course, and I'm not sure if it was good outrageous or bad outrageous that they actually had Samuel L. Jackson say the line, "Hold on to your butts." You might be watching this review and struggling to figure out whether or not I liked the movie. I did. I do. It's got some major weaknesses, but it's fun and entertaining, and it's got some tense moments. It really excels, I think, when it comes to the visuals of the creatures and the set designs, like that forest scene, or the spooky sulphurous graveyard where characters wind their way around enormous skeletons. The native civilization, too, with the giant wall and the temple honoring Kong, their god, made within the wreckage of an old, washed-up ship, and decorated with optical illusion artwork that tells the story of Kong rescuing them. The deaths in this film tend to be abrupt and a bit, I don't know. The manner of death almost makes a mockery of the victim. But one death scene is especially good, at least the aftermath of it is. A skullcrawler pulls off a sneak attack and devours its victim and his camera. The flashbulb keeps going off as it makes its way down the throat and into the belly, and we can see the flash, and we can hear the high-pitched whine of the camera. So even though the skullcrawler has disappeared into the thick haze, we have this creepy hint of where it is as it circles the group. This is a very cool moment, though I admit it feels familiar, and not just because I'd seen the movie before. I'd completely forgotten about this point. But as I was watching it, I felt like, I've seen this in something else. What have I seen this in? Where a monster eats somebody and swallows their cell phone, and you can hear the cell phone ringing in its stomach as it's walking around. You hear it over here, you hear it over there, and it gets louder as the monster gets closer and everybody's all tense. I'm thinking, like, Jurassic Park 3 has that in it. You know what? I'm gonna look it up. Okay, let's try the Jurassic Park 3, 7 out of 10, movie clip, A Broken Reunion. Let's try this.
Stupid jingle from the store, I heard it!
My phone?
Yeah, your satellite, where is it?
I don't have it.
When did you use it last?
He must have had it when he...
It's a different ringtone. Oh yeah, that dinosaur. I had a nightmare from watching that movie. It's kind of embarrassing. It involved a brain transplant. I don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, I guess that's what I was thinking of. Although, I don't know, I feel like I must have seen it in something else as well. Because that wasn't exactly what I was picturing. There are some odd things that make me scratch my head, like why did they choose to use the song We'll Meet Again in this scene? Was it supposed to be sentimental and serious, or was it a random cheeky reference to Dr. Strangelove? And why did they decide to use a dolly zoom on this shot when it would have been more effective elsewhere? But for the most part, it's alright. I don't get super excited at the thought of this movie, but it's fine. Oh, and it does have a post-credit scene that generated a lot of buzz and hype for the next movie. We get a quick look at what else Monarch has uncovered, cave paintings depicting other giant creatures fighting each other. Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. And those are the kaiju we got to see in Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I already reviewed. Those are my thoughts on Kong Skull Island. I'm glad I watched it again. It was good to refresh my memory of what this version of Kong is like before the new movie comes out. I like this Kong, but I still like Godzilla better, so that's the team I'm on, if it comes down to that. Of course, that shouldn't be a huge surprise by now, after all of those Godzilla movies I reviewed. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please go ahead and share your thoughts on this movie in the comments below. I look forward to reading them, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.